If you want to build insanely strong, super athletic, but most importantly, very mobile legs, instead of just uselessly massive hams, you might have to rethink your training when it comes to your leg musculature. And there is one exercise that can help you achieve all of those due to its absurd efficiency and diversity in variation, and that is the Cossack squat. So today we're going to go through how you can use the Cossack squat in all of its diversity to advance your complete leg musculature when it comes to flexibility, strength, coordination, and overall athleticism. So if you're ready, let's go and have some fun. So let's check out the first two variations, which will make up your base movement, getting both feet completely flat on the ground and parallel, and bringing your hip joint all the way down to knee height, while both feet stay in the exact same position. Now that is very important. With parallel feet, we're going to open up our adductors and add a little bit more hip flexibility, while turning our foot upwards will shift that flexibility from our adductors to our posterior chain, so our hamstrings, our gastroc, our soleus, and even our Achilles tendon. So what you will want to do is work like so until you have the necessary flexibility to lower down all the way, and then you should start working on opening up like so, going into external hip rotation, adding a little bit more mobility for our hip joint while working on our posterior chain flexibility. So now we have a very quad dominant exercise, the Cossack squat, adding a lot of hip mobility and a lot of flexibility for our adductors and our posterior chain. Not to mention that the unilateral nature of the movement will help us work on our coordination while adding even more resistance to one leg at a time, because we are not raising through a symmetrical movement pattern. Now, your second goal should be increasing your range of motion, both with parallel flat feet until you are all the way down, basically in a lateral squat position. Now you're gonna have even more adductor stretch on the inside of your thigh, as well as getting complete range of motion into an external hip rotation on one side with one foot fully flat. Now you're gonna require a little bit more hip flexor strength, a little bit more core strength to keep you upright, but this is going to help you open up your hips all the way, help you with exercises such as the straddle position or the pancake fold, the front split, and other very high demanding flexibility positions. So now that we've mastered our 4 base movement variations, we can start checking out other variations that are a little bit more demanding and are gonna focus on different benefits. Starting with one of the most common problems people have, hip flexor strength and hip flexor flexibility. And now that we have the necessary ankle, knee, and hip mobility, we don't have to keep our feet flat anymore. We can start raising our heel to lower down into an even lower Cossack squat, and we're going to lower our bent knee carefully, start activating our hip extensors, which in turn are going to lengthen our hip flexors, our quadriceps, and even our lower abdominals, giving us a nice stretch in our anterior chain. And of course, you should start working on being able to reverse this movement, which is going to require said hip flexor strength, just like so, carefully. But until you do have that strength and that mobility, you can start working with your hands on the floor, assisting yourself the tiniest bit, and over time work yourself up to being able to reverse like so and repeat on the other side. This moves us to the variations that add a little bit more posterior chain flexibility. We are in our low Cossack position, and we're gonna start grabbing our right foot with the right hand, if that is the extended leg, for level number 1. So you're going to work dynamically all the way up, all the way down, and that is very important. If you do not lower up all the way, you're gonna miss out on a lot of quad strength we can be building through this movement. Grab your toes, pull them in, lengthen your posterior chain even more, and actively push your hips towards the floor while doing so. All the way up, all the way down, and touch, and try to stay balanced, which is going to require even more core activation, as well as a lot of balancing around your ankle, which in turn is going to help you with strengthening those. Now, taking this a step further for massive flexibility benefits, once again, we're going to lower down into our classic position, and now we're going to cross over left hand towards the right foot, which is the extended leg once more. And now we are adding not only a lot more posterior chain flexibility by pulling our toes in, but we're also adding a lot of lumbar rotation, releasing a lot of tension surrounding our lumbar spine in our spinal erectors before we once again move all the way up, all the way down, and cross over on the other side. Now you can place one hand behind your knee, grab over here before you bring your upper body forward by shifting your center of gravity and lowering down on the other side. Grab and switch. Now for the next variation, you're gonna have to be absolutely careful so you do not hurt yourself, because we're going to maximize the amount of mobility we can get out of our ankles, our knees, and our hips. Same starting position, we're going to lower down, raise our heel, and now we're going to first start bringing our knee down, and instead of pushing our hips forward through hip extension, we're going to go into even more hip flexion by pushing our butt all the way down to the ground. Now you have external rotation in your hip joint, you have rotational forces around your knee, strengthening the surrounding tendons and ligaments, and we have a lot of ankle mobility because we are in complete ankle flexion and lengthening our entire foot musculature to get a stretch out of those as well. And this brings us to the hard part of the movement, reversing it. You'll have to flex your abdominals, flex your hip flexors and your quads to get up all the way, and then reverse on the other side. Slow down the movement, bring your knee down with your hands on the floor until you have the necessary mobility and the necessary strength. You can slow it down. You can even hold this position for a second or two before, if you need the support for now, you reverse with your hands and move down to the other side. Now, of course, we can take this exercise to even greater heights by lowering down all the way, doing the same thing we did before by pushing our hips down all the way. And now, level number one is adding that posterior chain stretch on this side, and you can even start folding forward towards your leg before you get up. Repeat on the other side, just like so, and grab once more. Of course, the same thing goes for adding that lumbar rotation and spinal mobility by turning sideways, just like so, reversing and repeating on the other side, just like so. And then we have two more levels, which are going to add even more posterior chain flexibility to our upper body as a bonus by placing our hands on the ground, lowering down this way, all the way up, all the way down, push your hips down and reverse. Taking this even a step further is lowering down onto our elbows, which means that you already have to have a lot of posterior chain flexibility to be able to lower from this position, sit down all the way, reverse and repeat on the other side. Now, the amount of knee, ankle and hip mobility you can get out of those four variations are absolutely insane, but should also not be taken lightly. So please slow those movements down. If you have any sort of pain in your joints, then totally stop, dial it back a little bit, because if you get hurt in those positions, you're going to just set yourself back. Now, having worked mostly on anterior chain strength, we're going to add a lot more posterior chain strength, once again lowering into this position, and we're going to add a lot of upper body strength and flexibility. Once again, as a bonus, you're absolutely welcome. Right hand behind the right leg, which is the extended side, 1 to 2 feet between our knee and our hand, because from here we're going to start activating our entire posterior chain, flexing every single muscle, starting around our heel, moving all the way through our gastroc, our soleus, our biceps femoris, our gluteus, our spinal erectors, even our trapezius, and our deltoids to lengthen our arms. Now we have this absurdly amazing stretch in our entire anterior chain as well, before we come forward once more using our core strength and our hip flexor strength, lowering down to the other side and repeating. And once again, I would advise you to go through those movements dynamically. You can of course slow them down, you can speed it up and work a little bit more explosive, but for the beginning I would advise you to work at whatever pace makes this a little bit more enjoyable for yourself, and over time you can start adding even more and more resistance. Now I'm going to show you how. Now, I'm nothing if not consistent, which is why we're going to take this one also to the next level. We're going to lower down once again, we're going to cross over once again, but this time we're going to lower onto our elbow just like so, requiring even more strength from our posterior chain while adding even more flexibility to our anterior chain, lengthening our shoulders and our lats and pulling our fingers all the way over here before, once again, core strength and hip flexor strength to bring us forward, all the way up, all the way down, down onto our elbow and pushing our hip up, lengthening our anterior chain while flexing our entire posterior chain. And now comes the fun part. We're going to start adding resistance, starting out with a very low weight, and over time, of course, using progressive overload, just like we would do with any other sort of training, and start going through as many variations as you can. Lower down into level number 1, lower down into level number 2, get up all the way, add your posterior chain strength, reverse, do on the other side of course, so you don't end up fully imbalanced, and add those ankle, knee and hip mobility things, add those posterior chain stretch things, and add everything you remember from all of the variations we went through. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that you can basically use the Cossack squat as your only leg exercise. Go through as many variations as you can, start adding more resistance, start holding some of the stretches for longer, adding slow movements for slow twitch muscle fibers, adding explosive movements for fast twitch muscle fibers. Basically, you can work on strength, endurance, coordination, flexibility, and hypertrophy, all of that with a single exercise, and you never even need to change your starting position. This is, in my correct and humble opinion, the best leg exercise you can do, especially if you do not want to complicate things, while still reaping the most bang for your buck and the most benefit you can get from an exercise. So try it out and let me know how it went. And if you like the video and subscribe, and come on, join us. We do stuff like that pretty much every single day, which means that I'll see you tomorrow. So until then, Captain Cairo, peace out.